Assalamu alaikum. We'll start inshallah in just 30 seconds. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. It's good to see everyone again. I hope your break was full of fun. And today, what I want to do is go over the story or a moment in the life of Suleiman alayhi salam, specifically his interaction with the queen of Yemen or the queen of Saba, who's commonly referred to as Queen Sheba. And I want to focus on it from a particular lens, and that is the lens of responsibility. And this is something that I'm sure we're all conscious of, whether it's us as individuals or our generation or the younger generation. There seems to be this lack of responsibility. And as unfortunate as that is, it really is a product of our current reality. Not the times that we live, but what we have available for us. And that is luxury. In fact, any society that becomes too comfortable, slowly but surely, the generations will become decreasingly responsible. Well, why should I do this? Why should I do that? A lot of conveniences, a lot of services that are offered to these young kids, and they grow up just kind of being served. And we see this quite often in certain parenting styles, and it is important that we raise awareness in our own minds so that when we, or if we are already parents, we don't fall into the same mistake of making our children overly dependent on the services of other people. And to kind of put us in the mindset, yesterday I was at Soka University giving a talk, and one of the non-Muslims there asked a question that I really liked. And that question was, if you were just to leave us from the Islamic perspective, leave us with one thing, what would you tell us? And I told her, and I told the room, I would tell you that you have a purpose in life. You have a purpose in life. And it is your responsibility to find that purpose. We as Muslims, it's handed to us on a golden platter, or this beautiful book, the Quran. And through the stories of the prophets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us tools and elements and ways of perceiving the world that are quite relevant even to our times today. And so I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me the ability to communicate my thoughts and the lessons, or some of the lessons of this story, so that we can all benefit bidnillahi ta'ala. And the story starts in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ عِلْمًا وَقَالَ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي فَضَّلَنَا عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we have given Dawood and Suleiman knowledge. And they said, Alhamdulillah, praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are grateful to Allah because Allah has given them a favor that is better than what He has given other people. And quite often in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Suleiman, He always brings his father in the context. Always He pairs them. And it's quite interesting when you compare the story of Dawood to the story of Suleiman. What you end up finding is a very strong parallel between the two characteristics. As though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, and sometimes He quite explicitly says that Suleiman is the way he is because his father was that way as well. And this brings us to the first responsibility. That is the responsibility of finding a role model. We are all being influenced, whether we recognize it or not. It's a sheer fact of being a human being. There are things that are influencing us. Even the weather influences us. I talked to my mom. She's in Chicago. Chicago, if you know the weather out there, it's bad. You can go 2 weeks, 3 weeks without seeing the sun, maybe for only an hour. And it affects the mood. So what is influencing us? There is something, there is someone. And it's our responsibility to really acquaint ourselves and become more conscious of who is influencing us. Now, as Muslims, our goal is to be most influenced by who? The Prophet ﷺ, or the prophets in general, or the companions, or someone like Maryam ﷺ. Whoever it is, that's who we want to be our role model. And it requires an effort to actually do that, to appreciate this person. As human beings, we only look up to people who we think are worthy of looking up to, and who we want to be like. And it says a lot about who we are. And so if I can identify who is my role model, I learn about who I am and what path I'm really putting myself on. The Prophet, ﷺ, of course, everyone here will say that he is our role model. But we also have other role models. And what we need to do is consciously choose who that role model is. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting this responsibility, this burden on us. And the two main points, the two main elements of responsibility that these verses seem to revolve around are what's mentioned in this verse. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ عِلْمًا. We gave them knowledge. وَقَالَ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ, and gratitude. Knowledge is more than just reading a book and learning from it. Knowledge can be experience. Someone can be street smart. Someone can be socially smart. Someone can be savvy when it comes to business and trade. You know, it said that Uthman radiallahu ta'ala was able to turn sand into gold. Somehow, how smart he was and intelligent he was when it comes to trade. They didn't have universities back then, but he learned it and he became good at it. So knowledge is a central part, and information and knowing how to do what we do is a central part of this story, and we have that responsibility. I mean, think about it. If you ever listen to interviews about some of these very successful people, Mark Cuban, Warren Buffett, these other guys, they all have something in common, and that is they read a lot. Mark Cuban, 3 hours a day he reads. Warren Buffett 3 hours a day. There's some other guy, I don't know who he is, maybe the CEO of Google. He's always on social media. And he says that there's one day he dedicates just for reading. And I'll go back to this point later towards the end of this story so that we understand why reading is so integral to building responsibility and being able to deal with our situations in life. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes into a moment that's quite a powerful moment in the story, in the life of Suleiman. And imagine with me, just think about this mentally. Suleiman alayhi salam is leading an army, and the army consists of humans, of jinn, and of birds and animals. And the army is so organized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it as fahum yuza'un. They are so organized that when the first row of the army stops, it creates a chain effect to where all of them stop and they fall into position. That's quite fascinating. And what makes it fascinating isn't that it's just an army, but it's an army of different beings that have different ways of understanding. I don't know if you've heard of this story, but some French guy, or general or whatever, was asked, how long does it take you to organize your army or your military? He says, this amount of time. Okay, well, what if your army consists of 100 different people who speak 100 different languages? He said, at that point, it will require X, Y, Z amount of time. And then they showed him a clip of Mecca when the Imam said, Istawu, stand up. And you have people from all across the world speaking all different types of languages, who have all different types of backgrounds and ways of seeing the world. They all get up and do the same exact thing by simply hearing Allahu Akbar. That is quite powerful. So Sulaiman alayhi salam, when Allah is describing this, I mean, he is describing quite a scene. Imagine the birds and the lions and the tigers and all these animals are under his command. The jinn are under his command. The humans are under his command. فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ. And it gets better. As Sulaiman is leading this army and he's walking, he comes across a valley of ants. And he hears one of the ants say something quite interesting. He says, قالت نملة يا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم لا يحطمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون. Suleiman hears the ants say, O ants, go back into your burrows or your holes so that Suleiman doesn't accidentally stomp on you without him realizing this. So now put yourself in the shoes of Suleiman alayhi salam. You have this entire army behind you. And by the way, it wasn't just that. There are other descriptions of his army. He had command of the wind. He can control the wind. He could say, wind, go this way, wind, go that way. He can travel in an evening, what it would normally take back then, a month to travel. You know the whole concept of the magic carpet in Aladdin? They're taking that from Suleiman alayhi salam. That's his story. He is quite a powerful man. And here you have a tiny little ant that he heard and he understood. And when he heard what the ant said, he could not help himself except to smile. فَتَبَسَّمَ ضَاحِكًا مِنْ قَوْلِهَا. He smiled upon hearing what the ant said. Why did he smile? Well, he smiled out of gratitude, alayhi salatu wasalam. Out of gratitude that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him this ability to understand what an ant is saying, so that he can prevent himself and his army from damaging or harming or killing those ants. Because that's not what he was sent for. He was sent for mercy. He was sent for guidance. He was sent for conquering the hearts. Because he's not with an army. He's conquering something. But it's not people. It's not money. Suleiman alayhi salam, he didn't leave behind a kingdom. We don't see his kingdom today. We don't enjoy his wealth. But what we do enjoy is his character. We do enjoy him as a role model. And so he was out to conquer. He was out with a mission. And that mission was to conquer the hearts, using ideas, using thoughts, using character, and calling people to La ilaha illallah, none is worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And upon hearing the ant, Suleiman alayhi salam has a very beautiful response. He reciprocates what happens, but not with the ant. What the ant needs is the army to stop. And that's what Suleiman alayhi salam did. He reciprocates that moment by looking up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and saying a very beautiful dua. Memorize this dua. It's in Surah, the 27th chapter, verse 19. He says, رَبِّ أَوْزِعْنِي أَنْ أَشْكُرَ نِعْمَتَكَ الَّتِي أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيَّ وَعَلَى وَالِدَيَّ وَأَنْ أَعْمَلَ صَالِحًا تَرْضَاهُ وَأَدْخِلْنِي بِرَحْمَتِكَ فِي عِبَادِكَ الصَّالِحِينَ. Memorize this dua and make it very frequently. He says, Oh Allah, give me the ability. Notice the wording. Give me the ability to be grateful to you and to be grateful for my parents. Because Suleiman knew, I don't have this because of my own doing. I have this because Allah gave me a father who prepared all of this for me. I am enjoying something that Allah has gifted to me. It's not about me. It's not my doing. Sometimes you find funny people who don't really quite understand this. In Jordan, there was a guy who was built, you know how in the Middle East, they always build the apartment buildings for the grandfather builds, or the father builds a building for all of his children. Right? So this guy is building his building, and when he completed it, he was very happy, and he gathered some of his close friends, and he's bragging about how, man, I made this building. I was doing this building. I completed this building. So one of the guys tells the sheikh who was there, the sheikh, remind him, say, I did this bifadlillah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sheikh's like, I know him, doesn't understand it. No, what do you mean he doesn't understand? It's pretty common sense. Just tell him. Like, okay, watch. He said, so-and-so, Abu Ra'fat is his name. Abu Ra'fat, were you able to build a building with your own two hands, or because the fadl of Allah, because Allah helped you? He said, no, because of my own two hands. And everyone just laughed, because they know he said that very innocently. But the mindset. What are we thinking about? We're here in America, and there are challenges to that. There's a lot of blessings to that, isn't there? We are here in a masjid. No one here is worried that someone is going to come or the government is going to come and kick us all out and arrest us for being the masjid. There are some Muslim countries that fear that. But I believe we're all born in America, or most of us here are born in America. It wasn't us who brought ourselves here. It was our parents who brought us here. And it was our parents who worked hard. They came with nothing. My father came with $500. That's it. You're on your own. And that's how most of our parents were when they came here. And they worked hard. And they worked a full-time job and went to university full-time, and they built themselves. And they had to pay for their universities. And I'm sure many of us, we had the privilege of our parents paying for it. So when Suleiman alayhi salam expresses that gratitude, he expresses it first and foremost to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding that I am in a moment of a great blessing, and I have a responsibility of expressing my gratitude to Allah by placing the blessings where they belong. It's not me, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also not neglecting the role of our parents in getting to where we are. Yes, I understand in some people's lives, parents haven't been the best. Right? But for everyone else, inshallah, the parents have played quite an integral role to that. So help me be grateful to you and grateful for my parents. أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه. Next, help me do righteous deeds that please you. It's about the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyone else could have said, wow, that's pretty cool. I can hear an ant and continue on their day. But this is a prophet. And a prophet is always investing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding that I have a responsibility that I will stand in front of Allah and I will answer for everything I did. In fact, it said that Suleiman will be one of the last people to enter paradise. And he's a prophet. Why? From how many blessings he had in this life. So much he's accountable for. And of course, we know he passed with flying colors, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made him a role model for us. The idea is he understood, he was conscious, he was aware. That ant saying that is more than just another moment in my life. It is an opportunity that I should put the responsibility on my own shoulders to take advantage of, to serve as an investment for my afterlife. And it's as simple as saying, Alhamdulillah. It's as simple as that. And that's how we understand our interaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He makes everything easy. If you need Him, it's so easy to contact Him. You want to thank Him, it's so easy to say Alhamdulillah. If you want forgiveness, it's so easy to say Astaghfirullah. If you need help, it's so easy to say, Oh Allah, help me. That's the relationship. And Suleiman put that burden on his shoulders. He understood the responsibility. وَأَدْخِلْنِي بِرَحْمَتِكَ فِي عِبَادِكَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And allow me to be among the righteous people. This is a responsibility of ours. Because again, we're accountable for it. We're accountable for our salah. We're accountable for our zakah. We're accountable for our manners. We're accountable for the things we say to other people. We're accountable for where we get our money from, how we use our money, how we use our time. And when we start putting all of this in our mind, it is quite stressful. I understand it is quite stressful. But under that stress, or with that stress, Allah provides us with the tools to be able to overcome it. It's okay, that stress is fine when we have the tools to overcome that stress. And it's about the growth process. It's about being a little bit better tomorrow than today. It's about being a little bit better in a year from now than today. If I'm not establishing my 5 daily prayers, okay, let's start with 2. You choose the 2, whichever 2 you want. Let's say Maghrib and Isha are easy for you to do. All right, start with Maghrib and Isha, do the 2. And then after a few weeks, once you got those 2 down, start your 3rd, and then your 4th, and then your 5th. Work your way up. That is the number one expectation from Allah, and that is our responsibility. Now, Suleiman alayhi salam he is the king of kings of that time. He had it all. Yet he was still doing what? He was still expanding. He was still moving forward. He still had that ambition. I want more, but what he wanted more of is Iman. And so we always have to have goals, always have to have a vision, a sight. Where do I want to be? And if you're not moving forward, then by default, you're moving backwards. This is one of the laws of reality, the laws of life. If you're not making more money, you're actually making less money. Inflation. We all know how it works. If you're not learning more, you're actually forgetting, because we forget as human beings. If you're not improving yourself, you're actually becoming less efficient, less effective. Now they say the 30s are the new 20s. Right? So what does that mean? Is it taking you 30 years now to learn what people used to learn in 20 years? Where's the growth? So we always want to be growing like Suleiman alayhi salam, even in Iman. Because the scholar said, if you're not growing in Iman, your Iman is weakening. It's always going up and down. There's no such thing as my Iman is stagnant. I either go to sleep with more Iman than I woke up with, or I'm going to sleep with less Iman than what I woke up with. So always having this ambition, this motivation to go above and beyond, to do more. And by the way, Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says something very beautiful. He says that irada, will, this will to do things, this wanting to do things, this motivation, is an essential part to being alive. Not biologically alive, but psychologically alive, emotionally alive, spiritually alive, motivation. And he says that what motivates people are different categories. And he says the lowest motivation that a person can have is the motivation to eat, drink, sleep, and just make money. That's the lowest type of motivation. Because, and I don't mean this offensively or any way, it's exactly what animals do. They wake up, and what do? What's their only goal and instinct in life? To eat, to drink, use a bathroom, and then go to sleep. That's all they do. And so when human beings get into this type of irada, this type of will and lifestyle, it's simply not on par to what Allah created us to be. And he says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have given dignity to the human being. And with that dignity, we gave them more than just this very basic will to live. Rather, the greatest will, the greatest life force that a person can have is the one that pursues a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in that pursuit, you are fed, you are provided, you imbue the best of characteristics. Because when you pursue Allah, you're going towards Allah, you're essentially going to that light. And you start embodying that light. And you start carrying that light. The more you learn about Allah, the more you start to imbue yourself with the names and attributes of Allah, that of course is relevant to the human being. And so always having this responsibility in our mind, I have a duty to grow, to be better, to be more than what I am today. I am not the person who is okay with sitting and watching TV for several hours and just wasting my life away. And Elon Musk was asked, why don't you just retire and go to some beach and enjoy the rest of your life? And before he answered, I answered in my mind. I said, that would be pretty boring. That's exactly what he said. That would be pretty darn boring. Most people work and they work and they work, so they have 2-week vacation, so they go on a beach and sit and watch the waves. There's nothing wrong with relaxing, right? But if that's the person's idea of success, that is a very small amount of success. Now compare that to Suleiman alayhi salam, who had all that he had. And his legacy has lasted for over 2,000 years. That is something worth living for. Because this man didn't have one life as a result of his ambition. He has life literally flowing through the minds of billions of people on a daily basis for the past 2,000 plus years. That is worth pursuing. Now, what can we do as Muslims to create that legacy? And this is a different topic, but I'll throw it out there. This concept of endowment, waqf. It's such a beautiful part of our religion. Maybe we can talk about it at a different time, but do look it up. We should all have the intention that, inshallah, before we pass away, we'll leave behind at least one endowment that we help build or fund or help grow or whatever, so that our legacy continues. So Sulaiman alayhi salam, continuing the story, he was so aware of who was around him and who was under his sovereignty that once when he was meeting with his cabinet, and his cabinet includes humans, jinn, and all the different types of animals, he noticed that one small bird was missing. What bird was that? The hudhud, the hoopoe. Hoopoe, I think is in English, or the hopu, whatever it's called. The hudhud, small bird, very beautiful. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's a very, very beautiful bird. I had the privilege of seeing it once. He says, وَتَفَقَّدَ الطَّيْرِ. Where's this bird? Now, I'll be very honest. I don't know all of your names. And you're a small group of people. Suleiman realized, he recognized that there is a small bird missing. Why? Because he understood it is part of my responsibility to know the people around me. To know who's around me, who's doing what. To understand what are the needs of the people around me. And let's be honest, you are only as effective as how much you know your role in wherever you are is. Your role in your company, or if you have a business, your knowledge of what the business needs to grow. And that tends to do with, well, what do my customers want? That knowledge is part of responsibility. And when you take on that responsibility, you're able to succeed like Suleiman alayhi salam. And he says, Mali la ara al-hudhuda am kana min al-ghaibin. Is he missing? Where is he? لأعذبنه عذابا شديدا أو لأذبحنه أو ليأتيني بسلطان مبين. He says, if he doesn't show up now, I'm gonna discipline him. And the wording used is actually pretty stern. لأعذبنه. I'm gonna punish him. A painful punishment, which is a little bird. Or or I might even slaughter him. Or he needs to provide me with a valid reason as to why he was gone. You know, in our times today, when you look at parenting, parenting has become extremely ineffective in the way parents are raising children. And I'm not saying go and start hitting your children like, you know, the shib and all of that stuff that we endured. But we really need to understand something. How do I build a human being? How do I build myself? How do I help my child, my friend, my sibling, my coworker? How do I help them grow? Well, it needs to be through disciplinary measures, but disciplinary measures that are balanced with the opportunity of one explaining oneself. Now, all these stereotypes and all these videos come to my mind, clips of the Arab parents, and they go in and, what are you doing? Huh? Oh, I know you're doing something wrong. It's, no, I didn't, blah, 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 I didn't do anything wrong. And it becomes quite, overboard. There's no opportunity. The child is automatically lying. لا أنت كذاب. No, you're a liar. You're a liar. No, you're lying. So one way, I'm not lying. Nope, you're lying. And here we go. So this balance between discipline. I need to know that if I do something wrong, there are consequences to that. Now, we're adults here. I don't think our parents are, disciplining us that way anymore. But we still need that balance. We still need this recognition that if I go off track, if I make a mistake, it's not just another mistake. Here we go. Let's continue our lives. But rather to realize that I have a Lord, I have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is a Rabb. He is the Lord, and one of the meanings of that is that He manages our lives. And one of the ways He does that is keeping us in check, not to instill pure fear of Him in our hearts, but rather out of love and out of care for the human being so that we don't go off track. There's a lot going on in the world, and I can tell you, if the human being doesn't have an amount of fear of something, fear of consequence, the human being is willing to do everything. Look at Nazi Germany. Look what they did. Look at, for example, think if you were driving on the road and you know 100% there is no cop. How many of us are going to speed? Most, if not all of us. So it's just the idea, the possibility that there is a cop in some corner who might pull me over as a result of me speeding. Just that idea keeps us on the speed limit. And that's very necessary for our iman. Praying 5 times a day in our times today isn't the most convenient thing. It's not the easiest thing. It's not the coolest thing. And so we need this concept. Well, if I miss a prayer, it's not a small thing. And I'm accountable for that. If I make my money through haram, if I con someone, if I harm someone, it's not just another moment, but rather it will come back to get me. And it always does. Sometimes we recognize, oh, this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we don't. And Suleiman alayhi salam is putting the standard, hey, we're responsible. فَمَكَثَ غَيْرَ بَعِيدٍ فَقَالَ أَحَطُّ بِمَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ. The hoopoe comes back. The hoopoe comes back. And he says, Suleiman, I have a reason for why I was late. I know something you don't know. I mean, straight up, he just said, I know something you don't know. And we're talking about Suleiman, the king of the world. And that small little bird is coming and saying, I know something you don't know. And there's a huge lesson here. I say this as a parent. We often look at smaller people as, they don't really know what they're talking about. One time I was at the playground with my son, and there was a little girl running around saying, I saw the rainbow. I saw the rainbow. I saw the rainbow. And I look up, it's a blue sky. It's a blue sky. Well, this little kid is imagining things. And I'm trying to get my steps in and walking around, and I look up, and all of us, I see a rainbow. This kid wasn't lying. They were actually saying what they saw. And this happens a lot with my son. Oh, Baba, there's something over there. I'm looking over there. I don't see anything. I look closer. Oh, wait a minute. There is really something there. And so having this responsibility, the maturity to listen to what the other person is saying is a huge part of following the way of Suleiman alayhi salam. And when we start talking about husband and wife, and we spoke a lot about that, but there's a lot that goes on there. A lot of times, husband isn't listening to what their wife is saying, or vice versa. The wife isn't listening to what the husband is saying. And that's a huge flaw, a huge mistake. There's this assumption that, oh, they're just trying to trick me, or they're just trying to get their way. I hear this a lot, especially in younger couples, but it's really not the case. It's not an issue of who's right and who's wrong. It's an issue of at least trusting that this person isn't being foolish, that they actually are trying to communicate something to you. Maybe it's not the most effective way, or maybe it's a misunderstanding, but to say, hey, you know what? I need to listen to what you have to say. And this is exactly what Suleiman alayhi salam does with this small hopo. I know something you don't know. And we're not talking about what the hoopoe knows isn't something small. It's like this, oh, I saw something happening over there that you can imagine, oh, how Suleiman could miss it. Rather, what he saw was an entire kingdom in Yemen that is led and ruled by a lady, Sheeba. Now, in our times today, if a country elects a female president, or a queen becomes the top ruler, the supreme ruler of a land, it spreads. It's, wow, a lady is in this position? Oh, that's pretty unique. So you can imagine that such news would spread around the globe, especially to Suleiman, the king, because he's responsible for these international affairs. He didn't know. And that's pretty shocking. And look at the description of the hoopoe, how he describes it. He says, وجدتها إني وجدت امرأة تملكهم وأوتيت من كل شيء ولها عرش عظيم. I found a lady governing, she's the queen, she's governing this land, and she has a magnificent throne, and which is symbolizing a magnificent country or a magnificent empire. وجدتها وقومها يسجدون للشمس من دون الله. I found them prostrating to the sun instead of Allah. وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم. And it's clear that the shaitan has deceived them and made them think that their actions are correct, are right. فَصَدَّهُمْ عَنِ السَّبِيلِ فَهُمْ لَا يَهْتَدُونَ. And he caused them to divert from the straight path, and now they're not following guidance. Why wouldn't they prostrate to Allah, the one who brings out the rizq, the provisions from the earth and from the sky? This hopo is quite observant, because he wasn't just talking about the outer image of what he saw. He didn't just say, oh, there's a queen ruling them and they're worshiping other than Allah. He understood what is behind those actions, what is actually influencing them to do that. And that is the fact that the shaitan has deceived them. This is a very smart bird. And we here in the West, we're often deceived by outer images, thinking that if something is expensive, that means it's automatically good. There's a book called The Psychology of Influence. In the book, it talks about strategies, marketing strategies, how to sell. And one of the things they mention is that when you make something expensive, people automatically assume it's high quality. So notice, do this on Amazon. You'll always find things that this was $400 and now it's 70% off for $100. Go back 1 month, the same sale there. Go 3 months later, the same sale. It's a lie, it's a deception. So this hopo is able to see beyond it. Can we see beyond what we're doing? Can we see beyond our lifestyle, understand why we are living this way? It's a responsibility of ours because it affects everything we do. If all I can see in life is my social status, is how much money I have in the bank account, I don't mean to, make you ascetics, right? Stay at home and only worship. No, that's not the case. It's how do you view money? What do you see it as? For a lot of people, it's the end all be all. My status is equivalent to how much money I have. My status and my worth is equivalent to what degree I have or what job I have or what's my profession. But in all actuality, these are only tools for a greater cause. So the Quran describes money as khair, it's good, but only when you use it for something greater. Now, if I take that money and see this is an opportunity for me to do something more than just that basic will to survive, I can use it to help other people. Now I have seen beyond the facade of worldly life, and I have been, light has been put, inshallah, from the nur of Islam in my heart to be able to use it as more than just a commodity, but rather as a way of building my own place in paradise for all of eternity. So we are responsible to really sit back and look beyond what these things, these outer images really are, what this worldly life really means for me. And as I said in my last khutbah, the only thing this world has to offer, the only thing this world will leave every single one of us with is a grave. That's the only thing this world has to offer. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls us to paradise, calls us to a lot more. What time is it? Let's go for a few more minutes. Probably have to do two parts here. Now, Suleiman has been given the information, and he says, قَالَ سَنَنْظُرُ أَصَدَقْتَ أَمْ كُنْتَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. Let's verify what you said. I want to see if this is truthful, because Suleiman is pretty shocked. I mean, how can this go outside of my radar, go under my radar? How do I not know of this? And by the way, the Queen of Sheba was in what's modern-day Yemen, in central Yemen, a place called Ma'rab. It's still on the map today. It was in this area. اذهب بكتابي هذا. Take this letter of mine and toss it to the queen. Now, the hopo is taking this letter. He was given charge of this mission to go to the queen and to drop it. And Suleiman, right, is a gracious person. And he is so gracious that when the queen receives this letter and she calls her advisors, she said, I have been given a gracious letter. Why did she make that observation? Well, she noticed, well, there's a bird who came in and very lightly dropped it and turned away and left her to her privacy. You know how when someone comes and they, let's say you're at a restaurant, I'm sure this happened to you, especially in the Middle East. You're at a restaurant and now they give you the bill, and you have the tip part, and the guy is just standing there. And see what you're going to do. And we're all uncomfortable because we're used to, the server gives you the bill and they turn away. And this guy's looking and putting that pressure on you. See, that staying there and just staring at the person, that's lack of graciousness. That's not good character. But rather the server that turns away and gives you your privacy to make your own decision, that is good character. And this is precisely what Suleiman taught the hopo. When you go, toss the letter and give her her privacy so that she can think to herself, gather her advisors, and do that. Look at the responsibility, even in something as simple as passing on a letter to someone. How about when we communicate with each other on WhatsApp? How about when we drive on the road? How about when we engage fellow individuals? We come to the masjid. There's a lot of lack of graciousness that we find in people. People, oh, don't do this, don't do that. Why are you here? Why are you dressed that way? Why? And this all needs to be taught. And so the queen receives the letter, and let's go ahead and stop here. Inshallah, next time we'll continue the story with ta'ala. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them. Nothing? It's not a random spot. It's the next episode when the queen comes in play. So you have to come next time. Right. So um, it seems like the hopo was trained by Suleiman, and that's where it gets its very clever ability. He's taught by Suleiman, do this and do that. This is how you do it. And this really comes from Suleiman's ability to communicate. Right? As was mentioned, as I forgot to mention, but the verse is mentioned, وَعُلِّمْنَا مَنطِقَ الطَّيْرِ. We were taught how to speak to birds. And speech and the ability to communicate is such an integral part in relationships. It builds people, it helps people grow. And it's all about understanding, okay, this person, how do they think? What is their age range? What is their maturity level? And so you can take any piece of information and effectively communicate it to anyone if you know the language that you can to speak to them. So you take a child, for example. How do I teach my child about Allah? Well, I need to understand what is interesting to the child. Children like to play. It's all about the games and the toys and having fun. So if I can communicate the idea of who Allah is through those words, through those ideas, it resonates with the child's mind. Or if it's an adult, let's say an elderly person, an employee, someone going to, it's all about understanding how is this person thinking, what's their mindset, and choosing the words that really resonate with that individual. So this is how Sulaiman alayhi salam was able to train the hopo or the hupo and all these other individuals. It's effective communication. Jerusalem. Yeah, Jerusalem. That's why they're always saying the what do they how do they call it? The Haykal Suleiman, Temple Mount, and all this stuff. He was in Jerusalem. So Islam doesn't want us to cut relationships with other Muslims. Hence, you have the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, if two Muslims don't speak to each other, meaning they see each other and they just turn away from each other, right, that their reward is not accepted. It's kind of postponed until they reconcile. So Islam never wants us to sever ties with people. That doesn't mean we can't make space between people. So we have to understand who is this individual and how much space do I want between me and them. And yes, there are toxic relationships. And a toxic relationship, it's more than just, oh, I have to endure this person or have to deal with this person. No, a toxic relationship can suck the life out of an individual. And there are people you have to cut off. Right? But it's understanding, okay, how do I define a toxic relationship versus how do I define a relationship that's just a little bit tumultuous? Like it's difficult to navigate. And then creating these spaces. So think of kind of three layers, three circles. You have your inner circle. There's probably going to be a few people, a handful of people who are very close to you. You trust. It could be one, two, three, four, whoever. And then you have a second circle, or the first circle. These are people who you engage very frequently. The second circle, these are friends, let's say, that you see every now and then, you communicate with every now and then. And then the third is these are acquaintances. You really only talk or you send greetings to one another. So it's just about understanding, right, who needs to be in which layer and what is the the red line in which I'll cut a person off. There is a red line. Now, I don't think Islam defines exactly when that is. I mean, Yaqub alayhi salam, his children did to him some pretty nasty things, taking his child away from them, but he never cut that relationship off. He did create some space, right? This distrust in them, but he didn't cut it off. And I think it's really on a what is it called, on a case to case basis, something along those lines, and who the person is. You know, yes, that's in the hadith. Yes, say, hey Muhammad, Khalid was saying really good things about you, and Khalid never said anything good things about you. You two are upset with each other. Go to Khalid, say, Muhammad, man, he's saying he's so upset with what's happening. He doesn't like what's going on. He wants to go back to the old days, and that really never happened. But that is allowed. That's a concession. It's not. How can you talk to jinn? The jinn aren't interested in talking to you, nor do we have access in talking to the jinn, right? A jinn who's willing to talk to you is one of two types. Either you've sacrificed something that is harmful to your iman to get to talk to them, or they're talking to you because they want to do some harm to you. No one sees the jinn in the actual form. In their actual form, no one sees jinn. That's a lie. Even children. That's possible, but that's not the actual image of a jinn. Like I had this individual I studied with in Jordan from originally Mississippi, a convert, and he said his grandmother lived in like the super rural areas, like no one is around for the next 5 miles, and the jinn like to be in areas that are, further away from human beings, and so they would go and visit their grandmother every now and then. And he said that he was playing with his cousin once, and he saw this man, like milk white skin, staring into the window. And they just freak out. And their grandmother is blind. So they go, grandma, this and that. And all that. You guys are seeing things. And they're just shocked in fear. So what do? They're young, like 6 years old, or maybe a little bit older. They hide under the covers of the bed. And they sit there for like 20, 30 minutes. And they said, eventually we have to come out of here. And he says, we remove the blanket, and that same man is floating right above us, his nose right next to our nose. And he said, I never understood what that meant until he became a Muslim. But that's not the actual image of a jinn, like their actual form. They can shapeshift, yes. What do you mean? No. It has nothing to do with iman. Right. Here we go. Now we get the energy going. Let's talk about the jinn. Yes. Mm-hmm. Muslim jinn, all right. Alhamdulillah, good. That's possible. It's possible. My mother-in-law has some very interesting stories, right? Of them like carrying her out of her bed, bringing entire car inside her apartment. Yes, but not freely. The remembrance of Allah. Jinn cannot be in a place where it's clean and pure, and the remembrance of Allah is quite strong. So in my mother-in-law's case, the jinn were already there when they moved in. Yeah, they do that. Yeah, they do that. Yes, yes. Well, he's a prophet. Why not? Well, it's a realm that it's not scientific, it's not tangible, so we really don't have much information. It's possible to see, it's possible for the jinn to shapeshift to where the human being can see them. Right? But how that works, they clearly don't have free ability to do that. There has to be some sort of gateways, if you want to call them that, for them to enter into our wavelength of sight. Yes, yes. No, that's just the parents' uh, folklore. Yeah. Yeah, no one's controlled. No, not really. Not really. Because that's general. It doesn't negate the possibility of possession. Now, what is up for debate is the nature of possession. What's going on, right? And how do you draw the line between mental health versus possession, and how do they overlap? I believe there's an overlap. Right? This is my own theory. It's not Islam, so if you don't agree with me, there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think the jinn have some sort of ability to manipulate the molecular structure of our brains. Right? I'm not saying that every mental health case is as a result of the jinn, but I'm saying it is possible that some are. And possession can fall under that. There's some crazy things, man. Is- So a qareen simply means a companion, someone who's constantly following you. I'm guessing there are more jinn in population than human beings. So you'll have a jinn assigned or iblis assigned to go to that person, that person. So everyone has at least one jinn trying to uh, go after them. Mhm. Yeah, he understood that this is a jinn. Hmm. Yes, yes. Not all of them. Some, yeah, yeah. Bismillah. Come on, we're here for a long night. Get your snacks. Some donkeys can see them. Dogs, I think, can see them. Any other questions? Yes. Did someone say yes? No. Okay. Shaitan it means a tamarrud, which means someone who's mischievous. So a jinn can be mischievous, and thus a shaitan. So can a human being. Shayateen al insi wal jinn, as the Quran says. So not every jinn is a shaitan, and not every human being is a shaitan, but you can have shayateen from both. Hmm. Jinn, yes. Now, it is possible that he colludes, as the Quran alludes to. He can collude with human beings, but he's not going to come as Iblis. He's going to come as a human being, the form of someone, and collaborate. Hmm. We good? Yeah, we can. Good topic, I guess, for another time. All right. Jazakumullah khair, everyone. Thank you.